Chapter 5. The origin of our thoughts, our cerebral memory.
Our cerebral memory. In order to ensure our survival, evolution has endowed our brain with a cerebral memory that allows it to function like a computer. This memory is indeed capable of storing information from everything we experience or learn throughout our lives. And when we face an event, our brain can call upon this database to find the most effective way, that is the most adapted and quickest, to respond to this event. Our personal memories. The more exhaustive our memory database is, the greater the chance that our response to events will be optimal. This logic drives us, throughout our lives, to experience as many direct experiences as possible, which our brain then records as personal memories. Our shared knowledge. But that's not all. Thanks to the advanced language and abstraction ability that characterize our species, other human beings can share their own experiences with us, whether orally or in writing. These indirect experiences are then recorded by our brain as shared knowledge. Our mental conditionings. From a young age, our parents, our peers, and more generally society through education, religion, or the media, bombard us with beliefs, opinions, injunctions, and criticisms. The world is like this, you are really to this, we don't do that. All these elements, which do not belong to us, but which we accept unconditionally because of our dependence on these people and institutions, and our still underdeveloped critical thinking, form external conditionings, that largely determine the way we later view ourselves, others, and the world. But we do not inherit from our relatives and society only beliefs. We also inherit values and principles, which are part of our external conditioning. Values and principles are moral and ethical codes derived from culture or tradition, and generally linked to a dimension greater than that of the individual, whether it be the family, society, or even religion. These codes resemble rules of conduct, that aim to guide our behaviors, by defining what is considered acceptable or unacceptable, good or bad, right or wrong. Our emotional wounds. During our childhood, our parents and relatives, by ignoring, or more or less consciously flouting some of our essential needs, inflict mistreatments on us, which subsequently generate emotional wounds. These wounds, such as the feelings of betrayal, rejection, injustice, abandonment, or humiliation, then take roots in us in a lasting way. And when, even as adults, an event reactivates them, they are the source of emotional reactions, that are often disproportionate. Our traumas. When during childhood, we are victims of severe abuse or repeated mistreatment, our system can develop traumas, which imprint themselves, as we have seen, both in psychological form in our brain, and in physical form in our body. But these traumas can also arise from intense personal experiences, particularly during one-off tragedies such as accidents, deaths, or physical assaults. Our fears and phobias. Our brain has been optimized to detect potential dangers, and to react to them as quickly as possible. But not only that. Thanks to its faculty of anticipation, it constantly tries to guess these risks in advance. Our fears are the result of this natural prediction mechanism. Some of our fears are instinctive. Implanted since the dawn of time in our reptilian brain, they aim to prevent immediate physical dangers. But with the formation of our limbic brain dedicated to managing emotions, other fears have emerged. These more psychic fears are the fruit of our traumas and emotional wounds, but also of our conditioning, our memories, and our knowledge, when these have been experienced negatively.
Our own beliefs. Our brain lives in the anxiety about what might happen. That's what makes us beings who tend to imagine the worst. So, to reassure itself, our brain builds up, from the information in its possession, its own beliefs, in addition to those it has inherited. These beliefs reassure us because they give us the feeling of knowing how the world works, I am like this, people are like that, and by extension, of being better able to predict upcoming events. Moreover, by simplifying our vision of the world, these beliefs create shortcuts in our brain, that speed up our decision-making in response to events, thus allowing us to increase our chances of survival. Our unconscious programs. Faced with an unprecedented situation, our brain has the ability to combine information already in its possession, and thus conceive new responses. However, this mechanism is coupled with an essential side effect. When an event occurs, our brain subliminally associates with it, in addition to the emotions it provokes, all the external circumstances that accompany it, such as the place, the sounds, the smells, or even the people present. These associations create countless unconscious programs in our brain, that subsequently influence our behavior, without us even being aware of it. Our guinea pig, for example, if he had fallen down the stairs at his school, might unconsciously associate school with a vital danger, and gradually abandon his studies, without being able to rationally explain why. Chapter 6. The origin of our thoughts, our evaluation of events. As we have seen, when an event threatens one of our essential needs, our brain reacts immediately. It mobilizes all its resources, in order to make the most accurate evaluation possible of the event, so as to be able to find the optimal response, which will best satisfy the threatened need. But before we can achieve this evaluation, the information about the event passes through 4 successive filters.
Our cognitive biases. While it possesses extraordinary capabilities, our brain is still limited. Unable to process in real time the flow of information from our senses, it seeks to gain reaction speed. To do this, it sorts and creates shortcuts, the cognitive biases. These biases, generally unconscious, are common to all human beings. Their consequence, just like our beliefs, is to simplify our vision of the world, but also to influence the way we perceive it. The confirmation bias, for example, pushes us to seek information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs, while the status quo bias discredits novelties, and thereby leads to resistance to change.
Our assumptions. Just like our brain, our senses are limited, for example we can't see in the dark, or read the thoughts of others. This makes it impossible for us to obtain all the information we need, to make an objective evaluation of a situation. So our brain has no choice but to try to fill in these gaps by making assumptions. The trouble is that most of these assumptions are subjective, as they are influenced by our pre-existing beliefs and conditioning, fanciful, since our imagination can be limitless when it comes to making suppositions, and negative, as our mind tends to imagine the worst to protect itself from it. Our interpretations. In our need, not just to understand, but to find meaning in the events we are facing, as this is one of our essential needs, our brain can't help but interpret those same events. Its goal? To reduce uncertainty, by trying to uncover, behind the obvious information, the hidden elements or motivations that might better help us understand the event. But here again, the problem is that these interpretations are generally reductive, in order to improve reaction speed, and subjective, as they are influenced not only by our pre-existing beliefs and conditioning, but also by our assumptions, often erroneous as we've seen. Our feelings. We've all experienced it. The same event can provoke different responses in us, depending on the emotional state we are in, an emotional state influenced by the feelings that animate us at the time of the event. But our evaluation also depends on the feelings, whether conscious but more often unconscious, that we have associated with this type of event in the past, through our wounds and traumas of course, but also through our personal memories, which are never neutral, but subjectivized by the emotions they triggered in us at the time. These 2 types of feelings form a filter, that also colors our evaluation of the event. Our judgments. It is therefore from the very fragmentary information captured by our 5 senses, filtered through the distorting sieve of our cognitive biases, enriched by our often misleading assumptions, distorted by our generally haphazard interpretations, and manipulated by our feelings linked to our past, that we scaffold, in a totally involuntary and unconscious manner, our evaluation of events. But because of the partiality of all these parameters, our brain is unable to formulate a factual and rational evaluation. Instead, it produces a totally subjective judgment.
Our thoughts. It is this subjective judgment that then induce a thought in our mind, giving rise to the mental-emotional response we detailed earlier. It is worth noting that while some of these thoughts arise consciously in our mind, enabling us to act thoughtfully and purposefully to satisfy our needs, most of them remain unconscious. They nevertheless influence our responses to events, without us even realizing it.
Chapter 7. Summary and Conclusions.
The characteristics of our thoughts. We have just seen that most of our behaviors are driven by the thoughts we form about the events we face. But our thoughts do not belong to us. Most of them are, in fact, the fruit of external conditioning, meaning beliefs, values and principles, that have been imposed on us from an early age, and which we have never questioned. Our thoughts tend to be negative and backward-looking. Many of them come from the traumas, wounds, and fears of our past. This negativity is further amplified by our survival-oriented biological conditioning, which leads us to see threats everywhere. Our thoughts are unreliable. Because of our physical and cognitive limitations, our thoughts are based on a perception of reality that is both incomplete and distorted by biases that only let us see what we choose to see. Our thoughts are not rational. Since all our thoughts pass through the filter of our emotions, it is impossible for us to experience events. We can only experience the emotions that those events arouse in us, a totally subjective emotional experience. In the light of this observation, it might seem absurd to rely on our own thoughts, which do not reflect who we are as individuals, but rather how we have been conditioned, and how we have emotionally processed the events of our past. Yet, this is what we do day after day, identifying with our thoughts, and thus granting them disproportionate power over our lives. Realizing that most of our thoughts are in fact just deceptive mental constructions that imprison us in recurring behavioral patterns, enables us to take a distanced look at them, and free ourselves from them. We are not our thoughts. The characteristics of our emotions. Based on the processes we have highlighted throughout this presentation, it is possible to define certain characteristics of our emotions. Our emotions are subjective and personal. Since our emotions stem from our thoughts, they essentially, like our thoughts, reflect our personal history, that is, the psychic conditioning and emotional wounds that our past experiences have ingrained in us. We cannot control our emotions. Our emotions are induced by biochemical processes beyond our control. Only by 1. Focusing on satisfying our essential needs, 2. Changing the way we judge events, and 3. Healing our traumas and wounds, that we make them evolve. We cannot free ourselves from our emotions. Denying or repressing our emotions risks turning them into impulses, making them even more unstable and violent. It also means disconnecting us from the monitoring system of our essential needs, thus condemning us to perpetual dissatisfaction. We are responsible for our emotions. Since our emotions are the fruit of our personal relationship with ourselves and the world, we are fully responsible for them. Blaming others for the emotions we feel is therefore not only unjust, but counterproductive. It is attacking the messenger rather than the real causes of our dissatisfaction. Originally a simple monitoring and motivational tool linked to the satisfaction of our needs, our emotions have come to be an end in themselves, thus taking control of our lives. So much so that we are accustomed to identifying with them. We say, "I am angry," rather than, "an emotion of anger ran through me." Understanding the root causes of our emotions enables us to take a fresh look at them, and realize that we are not our emotions, just as we are not our thoughts. This is the first step toward reclaiming our personal power. Our dissatisfactions. As we have just seen, our limitations, our biases, and our conditioning, lead us to make erroneous and overly dark judgments about the events we face. The thoughts and emotions that result from this, are often negative and painful, and the responses we produce, are generally ineffective or even counterproductive. Since our essential needs are then never fully satisfied, we live in a state of permanent dissatisfaction, which drives us toward addictive behaviors, whose unconscious aim is to silence the thoughts and emotions that are trying to alert us. It is this cycle that must be broken in order to finally find serenity.